Hi friends, it's your pal Scott Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons Stranger Things. Welcome to the Hellfire Club box set. Why did Hasbro build this? I think they built this specifically to begin to usher in Gary Gygax's dream of using Dungeons & Dragons for life modeling. Previously, there had been this remove, right? We're a player playing a player character. But now, Welcome to Hellfire Club is like, no, you're a player playing a player playing a player character, and that second level player is in a play group, right? The Hellfire Club itself, and then in addition to that, Lucas Sinclair and um, you know, Mike Wheeler and the core four, right? And Lucas Sinclair's um, sister as well, Lady Applejack. There you go. And so this is really taking the you're playing you're playing D&D. This is a layer up. And so why did they create this? Well, for a lot of reasons. And of course, there's the Muggle reason of, Stranger Things is coming out, we can do a box set. And a lot of, and no question, a lot of Muggles are going to run this flat, like it's a regular D&D box set, right? It's not, though. And so what I'm going to use it for immediately is what I think Hasbro intended it for, which is a time machine to explore the 5 decades of Dungeons & Dragons play itself, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is Rolling Thunder, a 1970s mid-America play group, and then with 5 players, right? 2 to 3 traditional players, right? And so those would be regular, 25 to 35-year-old white males, right? Playing traditional fantasy characters. But exactly like we see with the Hellfire Club, which is playing in the Persecution era of the 80s, we can test the boundaries of, well, what if women joined the table? What if there were people who were joining the table that were were not middle-aged white American dudes, right? What if they were immigrants in America, or people of color, or both of those things, right? And then and this is the part that I love, and this is why Welcome to the Hellfire Club is run. They don't want us to just see the adventure of the adventure. They want us to see the tension of the people playing the adventure. At the same time, there are pressures in their own IRL, right? And they want us to be hyper aware. They want us to think mechanically about playing Dungeons and Dragons as a player, right? Playing a player. That has never been done in any D&D product. That is completely new and completely fresh. So the first thing I want to do is a 1970s group, and it's going to be in the Midwest to mirror Gary Gygax's original group. I don't think it would be appropriate to actually run Gary Gygax and the players that he actually played with. We're not there yet. I do think that could be its own box set at some point, right? Because this is just the first foray, right? So we're going to have to come in, the Dungeon Master is going to have to do what the Dungeon Master does. And, you don't get everything you need in a box set because it's limited, but they're like, well, you know what you're doing. You're a Dungeon Master, fill in the gaps, right? And so this is permissioning us to do this. And I think it's really permissioning us to do a time machine, right? And so that time machine is going to be, 1970s, the tension of different genders at the table, the tension of the game being embraced by people of color and by people who weren't, native born in America, and can you imagine, right? dealing with an era, the 1970s, when Americans loved immigrants, right, and weren't fearful of them, and weren't trying to cast them out, and weren't talking about, open borders. They were just like, yeah, of course, like, we all love America. Of course you came here to be, you know, and I just, and what would an immigrant, right, who might have come from, foreign shores and is a person of color, what is their experience coming to Dungeons and Dragons and playing with these bog standard guys who are insurance salesmen and car salesmen and firemen, like, and what is it like if a housewife who's never had a job outside the home but has 2 kids is playing Dungeons and Dragons and getting one night out a week to do that, and exploring other worlds? What would that be like, right? Like, it's just Welcome to the Hellfire Club is an incredible product that opens up exactly what we've been wanting opened, right? That says, okay, yeah, we get that we're a player playing a player character, but I want all of it. I want a player playing a player character, and I want to deal with the IRL politics of being in a play group, right? And what does it mean to sit at the table? Am I welcomed? Am I excluded? How do we overcome that exclusion? How do we build inclusion in eras that we've never seen, right? Like, and the other thing is, this can help us to literally live, right, the history of Dungeons and Dragons through every single decade. And that's why it's been delivered in its 5th decade, right? Like, we've just finished 5 decades, and this will allow us to literally play as players in every, we're the first group of Dungeons and Dragons players to be able to play in every decade of Dungeons and Dragons in a single year, right? And face not just the monsters in the books, but the monsters that were here in our own time, right? And face multiple layers of monsters and multiple layers of story. Every single word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.